Hello everyone, and welcome to my Magicka Templar PvP build. This is a Lightning Staff, Frost Staff, Magicka Templar. It has insane AoE damage. Its player-based AoE is pretty much all undodgeable, and it can drop all of that damage in one huge burst. This is a really cool Magicka Templar build. It has got incredible sustain, the equivalent of 3k Magicka recovery. It deals tons of damage, 18k spell penetration, and of course it has over 28k physical resist and 33k spell resist fully buffed. Really great all-around Templar build. We've got a really strong block with the Frost Staff as well, and tons of AoE pressure on that front bar. Now, this build, of course, is not really playable on the live server just due to a lot of changes to Templar coming in the next coming Elsweyr patch, but I will definitely be playing this build once it hits the live server. I'm so excited. I'm actually going to level a Breton Templar just to play this. So if you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. I create regular ESO content. And finally, I'm really sorry I don't have PvP footage for you guys. There's pretty much nobody left on the PTS, so I'm looking forward to playing this on the live server once I get the opportunity. The gap closer spam on the PTS has definitely been a lot of fun. Alright guys, let's take a look at that build. So to begin, we are a Breton on this Templar, and Breton is just all around, I think, the best Magicka race in this patch. Dark Elf and High Elf are also really good choices. High Elf, of course, is going to have a little bit more sustain. Dark Elf getting the max stat option on both sides. And then Khajiit, I think, is a good choice for this build because we have a higher crit rate on it too, so Khajiit can really utilize their crit damage and healing passive on the Plar. Now, taking a look at our stats here, we've got 64 in Magicka, so all our points into Mag, just shy of 33k maximum Magicka. We've got 23.6k health and 11.6k stamina. So a lot of max stat to work with. The stam pool a little bit on the lower side, and the health pool a little bit on the lower side too. However, we've got quite a bit of resist on this build, so it's going to help keep our health up. And of course, we're on a Templar, so we can pretty much full heal ourselves with Honor of the Dead over and over. Now, the max Mag at 33k is awesome. It gives you quite a bit of Magicka to work with, and our sustain on this build is really, really good, so you should not have any sustain issues with this pool. Now, taking a look at the Magicka recovery and all the other recoveries on this spec, I'm going to buff up with the potion first. We've got 1959 Magicka recovery, 858 health, and 939 stamina recovery. Now, starting with the stamina recovery, this is great for the build. We are running a Frost Staff, so that's going to save us big time on stamina sustain. The block with the Frost Staff is very, very strong, and we can use it effectively to just help keep our stamina bars safe. The health recovery, so great. I mean, any PvP build that can get health recovery, it's totally worth it. This is the only source of healing that is not halved by Battle Spirit. So if you can get the health recovery on your spec, I would recommend getting it on there. And then finally, the Magicka recovery coming in just shy of 2k. Now, this is not all of our Magicka recovery. We are running Channeled Focus, and we even have Restoring Aura for the Magicka Steel. So with all of our buffs up, we push over 3k Magicka recovery while in combat on this build. So absolutely fantastic sustain, and you should not have resource issues on this kind of spec. Now, a big thing I want to mention too is that synergizes really well with the Frost Staff because we can actively return Magicka via Magicka Steel and the Rune while we're blocking with the Frost Staff. So really, really fantastic for this spec just all around. Now, taking a look at our spell damage and our spell crit, we're going to buff up with the potion, and I'm going to use the Dawn's Wrath skill for the minor sorcery. 2,749 spell damage on 46.6% spell critical. Now, we of course have an infused backbar staff as well, so we're pushing over 3.3k spell damage when we're fully buffed on this build. Really nice base stat values for this spec, but it doesn't look like it hits super hard quite yet. What makes this build hit so hard is its high penetration value. So I'm actually going to switch down to the Mundus real quick, and we are running the Lover Mundus. This is going to give us 2.7k spell penetration. We have also got a Sharpened Staff for another 2.7k spell pen. We have got the Spinner set on. This is going to bring us up to almost 9k spell penetration. And then finally, we've got the Light Armor for another 5k penetration. So 14k pen, and that's not it. We've got our champion points for the last little bit, guys, and that's going to push us to around 18k spell pen on this build. So a lot of penetration on this spec, and that's really where the damage is going to come from. 18k spell pen means that you're going to be dealing pretty much full damage to squishier targets. They're not going to resist your attacks at all. 18k is kind of the baseline of spell resistance for PvP. Most people don't have under that in a CP campaign. And then people who are quite tanky, you're going to be able to cut through quite a bit of their armor, allowing you to deal better damage to them as well. Penetration is ultimately the best way to go for damage in PvP, so yeah, that's why we've gone that way, and that's why the build hits so hard. Now, taking a look at our resists on this build, when we throw the rune down, standing inside our rune, we've got 33.6k spell resist, 28.8k physical resistance, and 3,189 critical resistance. Really awesome base resist for this build. Now, this is, of course, standing in the rune, so when we move outside of it, these go down by about 2k each, but we're in light armor, and these are our resistance values in light armor. Really good stuff. This is going to make us quite bulky. We've got an Honor of the Dead to heal ourselves almost to full health, and a block that we can return resource through while we're using. Yeah, looking like we can turtle really hard on this build. Now, taking a look at our Mundus, we of course went with the Lover, like I said before. Taking a look at the food, we have got the Clockwork Citrus Fillet. This is definitely your best food option for the build. The Citrus Fillet is going to give you the max health, the max Magicka, and your health and Magicka recoveries. I talked about health recovery. It's super great for PvP, and the mag recovery, of course, for our sustain. The max health to prevent us from getting bursted, and the max mag just for more damage and healing overall. Now, if this is too expensive for you guys, you can always go with the Witch Mother's Potent Brew. It's going to be a little bit of a cheaper option, and it's not going to give you the health recovery, and the other stats will be just a little bit lower, but of course it is much cheaper to use. Now, taking a look at the gear we're running on this spec, the first set that we have is Slime Craw. This is my favorite damage set in the game. I use this across so many different builds that don't have the Minor Berserk or are not running the Resto staff to get it. And yeah, it's just because it's great for a burst build in PvP. It'll increase all of our outgoing damage with that Minor Berserk, and we get the spell crit, which is great for our outgoing damage and healing as well. Now, taking a look at the next set we have, I've got the Spinner set on, and this was chosen because it gives, well, just great base stat, max mag spell damage, and then finally that spell penetration. So valuable for outgoing damage to have that spell penetration, and it's a big part of what helps us stack so much pen on this spec. Now, the next set that I have is Amber Plasm. And Amber Plasm is, again, one of my favorite sets for a Magicka build. It gives you so much recovery on the 5-piece. 250 Magicka, 250 stamina recovery. That's 500 base stat on a 5-piece. Man, there are so few sets in the game that give you that kind of a stat boost just unconditionally, just to put the set on. Really, really great. And of course, the max mag, the spell crit, the spell damage, fantastic for the type of build we're going for as well. Now, taking a look at our weapons, the first thing that I want to say is that Amber Plasm weapons are very rare and hard to farm. I'm on the PTS, so I just had easy access to the weapons here. Ideally, you'll probably be using a Spinner's weapon and just have Amber Plasm in your gear, or whatever combination works for you. But don't feel like you need to run Amber Plasm as your weapons. That is definitely not a requirement. A Spinner's staff will do just fine as long as you just shift the rest of your gear around. Now, the back bar is infused with the weapon spell damage enchant. This is, of course, our Frost Staff, and yeah, the reason we have the infused here is because not only is this our defensive bar, but this is also our healing bar. So the infused is going to be great for our healing and our outgoing damage. So just a good choice all around for the Templar, giving us that bonus spell damage. Now, taking a look at the front bar, I've gone with a Sharpened Lightning Staff, and we've got the Crushing Enchant for 1,600 additional penetration. So we've almost got 20k total penetration on this build when we have the Crushing Enchant going, but that, of course, does not apply to all targets, just the one that you hit and proc the enchant on. I like this choice a lot. It just adds more to that fact that we cut through armor with this enchant. And of course, the sharpened weapon on the front bar here is because we're not running the heal on the front bar. I have my heal on the back bar, the Frost Staff, so we can successfully block and heal on this build. So yeah, sharpened is just for all that damage. We're running nothing but damage on the front bar, so that's perfect. Now, taking a look at the jewelry, I have gone with full protective traits. And in my honest opinion, I think protective jewelry is really strong. It is probably the best jewelry choice trait for any PvP build. The additional bulk that this gives you is so great. I mean, these 3 altogether, this is like 9% reduced incoming damage to run the 3 protective traits here. It's like adding a defensive damage set to our build. And then for the enchants on it, I've gone with full spell damage, and that's just to up our outgoing damage. If you guys want to play this build in the non-champion campaign, I would recommend putting a stamina recovery glyph here. I think it'll help out a lot in no CP, just having a little bit more stam sustain that you're missing out from the champion points in the CP trees. Now, taking a look at the traits on our gear here, I have gone with full impenetrable. We are running the Frost Staff, so I think this is the best bet all around with a mixed bulk with the Frost Staff and the Lightning Staff combo. The Impen is just great for reducing incoming damage in PvP from pretty much everything, so yeah, everyone's going to crit, and this is going to help out a lot for PvP. Now, the traits on the gear, I've gone with a mix of Tri-Stat Hacky Joes, 3 of them on the big pieces of gear, and then all the little pieces of gear are maximum Magicka. I went with the Hacky Joe just to bulk our stamina and our health values on this spec. They were a little bit lower than I wanted them to be, so I think this is a little bit more appropriate. However, if you guys want to add even more health and stamina, or if you just want to play full max Magicka, you can change these traits out as you feel fit. Alright, let's take a look at the skills I'm running on this build. So, one thing I want to mention is that I don't have the footage for this build, right? And I really want to play this on the live server, but I cannot because of the changes to gap closers. This build wouldn't really function nearly as well as it does on the PTS. So I will be playing this next patch, but I will be playing around with the skills that I really like here. And we're going to start off at the first skill. I've got Reflective Light. This is going to be a great just kind of splash AoE. It's going to hit 3 targets. It's going to put a pretty decent dot on them, almost 11k flame damage on the dot, fully unbuffed. And on top of it, it's a snare for the 40% movement speed reduction. Really nice, I think, just to slow your opponents down. It's going to help you chase people and catch people as well when they're trying to get away. And of course, when you activate this, it's going to give you the spell critical buff. Now, because we get the spell critical buff here, you could definitely omit that buff from our potion. So if you are sticking with the Reflective Light, I would recommend running the Spell Damage, the Max Magicka, and the Detect Potion instead of the Spell Crit Potion, just because we get this buff from here. Now, the other skill that I did want to run here was Radiant Oppression, and this is just to give this build a very strong execute. And of course, there's always the option to add Puncturing Sweep. Now, I didn't want to do this simply because we've got the Gap Closer, and that's our primary spammable for the build. So Puncturing Sweep is just another spammable, so we have 2 of them. So it's up to you guys if you want to add the sweeps. It is a really good move, but once you guys see how the Explosive Charge functions, you might not want to add the sweep. You might want to just build around that Explosive Charge. So, getting to the next skill, it is, of course, Explosive Charge. And I want to fully buff for this one so you guys can see the tooltip value on this. 7.4k Magicka damage with 18k penetration. Really strong stuff on this build. Now, this is, of course, going to be the gap closer for the build. With the upcoming Elsweyr changes, this has no minimum distance. So this is now a spammable on the spec 2. And not only that, but this is an AoE. So this will hit a target that is rolling. That's a huge deal. It gives this build a massive anti-roll kit that is very mobile, and it makes it very hard for a rolling opponent to stay alive and get away. Explosive Charge, of course, is not going to stun your opponent. I didn't want to go for the other morph because it first was dodgeable, and the second reason was because the tooltip is much lower on the toppling charge morph. So I decided the explosive was the way to go, and you guys saw in the early footage, man, the amount of AoE damage that this can put out is just absolutely nuts, and the mobility from it is so clean. It feels so nice to use on the Elsweyr patch, so I'm really excited to bring this especially into World PvP and play around with this skill. Now, the next skill that we have is Radiant Aura. This is completely free to cast in the Elsweyr patch, making this quite a bit a better skill than it used to be. It's going to give minor Magicka steal to all enemies around you within a 28-meter radius. That's a massive radius, and the fact that it hits everyone is really nice because you will get that Magicka back regardless of who you're attacking, as long as they were around you when you casted the skill. It's going to be 300 Magicka recovery every 1 second when you have it on them. Yeah, that's a huge deal. That's 600 Magicka recovery if you're actively attacking. This build has a lot of dots, so you can pretty much ensure that in active combat you're getting a lot out of the Radiant Aura. Now, also, when we have it slotted, it gives us the minor recovery buffs to our Magicka, our health, and our stamina. I think this is really worth mentioning because it is nice to give us that bonus sustain, and I actually like this more on the Lightning Staff bar because on the Frost Staff bar we're going to be doing a lot of blocking, and when we're blocking we won't have any Magicka recovery. So for that reason, I think we'll get a little bit more out of this if we have it on our front bar. Now, taking a look at the next skill, I have gone with Solar Barrage, and man, one of my favorite skills for the Templar. It is an instant cast now. It pulses once every 2 seconds for 8 seconds, and while active, we gain in power, increasing the damage of our light attacks. This paired with the charge, it just means that we can just stay on top of someone, spit out so much AoE damage, and if we get the poke with the light attack, it's going to hit super hard too. Really great synergistic skill for this build. It adds a lot of AoE burst to our kit. So yeah, really, really good stuff. Taking a look at the next skill, we've got Shock Clench. This is the primary stun for the build. I went with the Clench morph because it actually splashes as an AoE. So for the sake of this build, it makes a little bit more sense because we have a little bit more AoE pressure. Now, if you guys want to go with the Reach morph, it of course has the full 41 meters of distance. 17 meters is very low distance, but due to the fact that we have the Gap Closer, we're likely going to be fighting mostly in melee range on this build anyway. But it's really up to the user here. I will likely be trying both when I play this build on the live server. Now, the reason I didn't go with the Aurora Javelin here is, well, the Aurora Javelin doesn't add a dot, so it doesn't add that extra pressure to the build. And on top of it, the Aurora Javelin is much more expensive than the Shock Clench. Well, not much more, but 200 more Magicka. I thought this was the cheaper option, so I picked this one here. Now, taking a look at the ultimate that we've got, Crescent Sweep. And man, on a Magicka build, Crescent Sweep is some dirty stuff this patch. Holy crap, 9.4k magic damage in the initial attack, an additional 4.8k magic every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. Pair this with our Solar Barrage, and we're pounding the Explosive Charge on top of people. That is so much AoE damage. It is really going to hurt your opponent. They're going to have a really tough time dealing with it, and a rolling opponent, man, they will likely not survive this combo. Now, if you use this on enemies that are in front of you, it deals 60% more damage. So this has got more like a 15k tooltip on the initial attack. Really strong stuff, guys. Really strong stuff. And it's only 72 ultimate. This is literally the perfect ultimate for this type of build. Now, taking a look at our back bar here, the first skill that I have is Blazing Spear. Now, this is a toss-up between Blazing Spear and the Frost Staff AoE field, and I think this depends on how you want to run the build. If you want to use Repentance on the front bar, I would recommend going for the Frost Staff AoE so you have the snare. But if you want to use the Reflective Light on the front bar, then you can go with the Blazing Spear back bar because you have that snare already. Now, the Blazing Spear itself is a really fantastic skill for this build because it actually adds more combo AoE potential to the spec. When you throw the spear in the air, there's a lag in time before it hits the ground, so you can throw the spear up and then charge on top of your opponent with your pulses going off. You can push out a huge AoE blast on a group of enemies. So yeah, really, really strong for this build. And then, of course, it creates the AoE field for 8 seconds, dealing 1800 magic damage every 1 second, and it can proc Burning Light. This can deal a huge amount of damage if your opponents get stuck in it, so really strong stuff. And it offers the synergy to your allies, getting a lot of Magicka or stamina back, depending on what they need. Now, the next skill that we have is Honor the Dead, and this is your primary heal for the build. We're going to buff up again so you guys can see the Honor the Dead tooltip, because we've got a pretty decent honor on this spec. 12.6k health, and then with the staff poke, we'll probably get up to 13 or 14k honor. Really nice. This is pretty much spammable for you. You can hold block and spam Honor the Dead. You'll get resource back after using this if you heal yourself while below 75% health, and that Magicka that it returns goes through block as well. So we've got 3 sources of Magicka even while we're blocking, so really good stuff for this spec. It allows us to have really solid bulk block sustain on our back bar. And then the next ability I've got is Race Against Time. This is here for a couple reasons. The first big one is that minor force buff for 12 seconds. 10% additional critical damage. We are a Templar that already gets a 10% critical damage bonus, so this is just absolutely fantastic to help push that damage on this build. The movement speed increase with the Major Expedition, That's a really big deal as well. It is our only source of major expedition on the build. And then finally, the immobilize and snare immunity, and of course it removes the immobilize and snares for 2 seconds. In the Elsweyr patch, I think this makes Race Against Time one of the best skills for PvP for pretty much any build. Having that snare and immobilize immunity is really important, and Race Against Time is only 2.2k Magicka, so it's very cheap to cast as well. So yeah, really great for this spec. The next skill that I have is Extended Ritual. This will remove 5 harmful effects from ourselves and throw a healing field down, healing us every 2 seconds. Our allies can activate it and purify all their negative effects as well. Really fantastic for a Templar. This is pretty much the defining Templar skill in PvP, is that Purge. It makes Templar really good against a lot of stuff that other classes struggle against. You can purge dots, you can purge curses, you can even purge Radiant Destructions off of you. It's really valuable for PvP, and, well, on a Magicka Templar, we can spam the crap out of it. So really good stuff for this spec. And then finally, the last skill that we have is Channeled Focus. This is, of course, going to be our armor buff and 240 Magicka every 1 second, going through block as well, really important. And then while standing in the rune, we get a little bit of a bonus to our physical spell resist as well. So yeah, we could actually hold block and tank out our rune really hard on this build and still have good sustain as well. So really nice stuff, and it's very cheap to cast too, so that's also important. And then for the ultimate on the back bar, I went with Temporal Guard. Now, this is up to you guys what ultimate you want to use here. I really like Temporal Guard on the Templar, just in PvP, because the Templar, well, it can come back from really low HP, and Temporal Guard can put you in a position where you can quickly heal up and you can return back to combat. The minor protection that it gives is also really awesome. Now, we do get minor protection from using our Adric Spear skills, but this is going to ensure that while we're on the defense, we still have that minor protection buff up. Now, you have other options for the back bar ultimate. I want to say that don't put an offensive ultimate here simply because the Crescent Sweep is such a good ultimate for this build. There's no other ultimate that is going to outperform Crescent Sweep on a spec like this, I think. But if you absolutely must, I think perhaps running the Destro ultimate would be a good option. And not going for the Eye of the Storm, but the Rage Morph, the one that throws the big field down. Because we're on the Frost Staff, this will actually immobilize any targets that it hits for 3 seconds. So the instant immobilize could be really beneficial for this build. And of course, it has a 2-second delay, so you could throw down the Elemental Rage, throw down a Spear, and then charge into the location and get quite a lot of damage. Alright guys, so let's take a look at the champion points on this spec. Starting off in our tower tree, I've got 44 Warlord and 11 in Sprinter. Focus, of course, on Warlord because, well, break free is very important in PvP. And then followed up by Sprinter because we've got a sprint. Even in light armor, it's important that we stay mobile on the battlefield. Taking a look at the Lover tree, we've got a nice spread for our sustains here. 64 Arcanist, 37 Mooncalf, and 23 in Healthy. Focus, of course, on Arcanist because Magicka sustain is our most important, followed up by Mooncalf and Healthy just to give us a little bit of a bonus to sustain in those two as well. I've got nothing in Tenacity because we've got pretty much 3k mag recovery, so I don't see the point in doing heavy attacks on this build, to be honest. The only time you'll be doing heavy attacks is if you want to get AoE pressure with your Lightning Staff, but your other AoEs are probably better, so yeah, there we go. Taking a look at the Shadow Tree, we have got 40 in Tumbling and 51 in Shadow Ward. Focus on Shadow Ward because we have a Frost Staff. We're going to be doing a lot of blocking on our back bar, so this is very important. And then Tumbling is fantastic because we have to roll dodge in PvP regardless of what spec we're playing, so that's why we've got the points here. Now, the important passives that we get in our green trees is, of course, coming from the Lover and Wind Running. Just a little bit of additional movement speed and the health and Magicka recovery while we're sprinting. Any build benefits from this, I think. Just the additional sustain while sprinting is actually pretty sweet. And then taking a look at the Apprentice tree. We've got 50 Spell Erosion, 49 Elemental Expert, and 51 in Elfborn. A really nice even tree here, and that's just to get the most out of our champion points. Yeah, we've got to focus on everything. Outgoing base damage, outgoing criticals, and of course, our penetration. Having 18k base penetration is fantastic. We could honestly push up to 20 to 22k spell pen before I'd say, okay, we should tone it back a little bit. Now, the important passive that we get here, of course, is the Spell Precision passive. The additional critical chance, really nice for the build. And then Arcane Well can be good, but for the most part, you won't get much out of this passive. Now, taking a look at the Atronach tree, we've got 81 Master at Arms and 39 in Staff Expert. Now, this does give us access to the Tactician passive, Roll Dodge, to set an opponent off balance, and an off-balance opponent, of course, can be stunned by a partial charged heavy attack or a fully charged heavy attack, and that's really why I like this passive in general. But the reason that I've put so many points in this tree is, well, Master at Arms is going to increase our outgoing direct damage. We've got a ton of direct damage on this build, so this will help a lot, and the 39 Staff Expert, we've got pretty much a 100% uptime on Empower, giving us a 40% bonus damage to our light attacks. This is going to help that Empower buff go even further, 22% additional bonus damage. Yeah, that's why I decided to put these points here. Now, I didn't put any points in Thaumaturge because we only have a handful of dots, and a majority of our attacks are direct damage and are spammable of choice that procs Burning Light. This all counts as direct damage, so I didn't want to put any points in here. Now, taking a look at the Steed tree, we have got 140 points total, 56 Ironclad, 60 Resistant, and 24 in Spell Shield. Focus, of course, on Ironclad because, well, direct damage is very deadly in PvP. We want to be resistant to incoming burst. Incoming criticals, of course, are very important to have defense against. We've got full impen on, so the resistant here gives us a huge critical resistance value, and the spell shield just to give us a little bit more spell resistance. Honestly, if you want to have a bit more healing power on this build, you can take the 24 out here and put it into the quick recovery passive, but it's really up to the user how you want to approach that. And then taking a look at the lady tree, I've got 56 light armor focus, 37 hardy, and 37 elemental defender with nothing in thick skin. We're a Magicka Templar. We don't need thick skin. We've got a very strong purge. You could say the strongest purge in the game. So yeah, we're going to be purging off those negative effects. We don't have to worry about that. And then the 56 light armor focus just to give us a bulk to our physical resistance. I put quite a few points in here because physical resistance is really where a light armor build is lacking. So this helps make up for the fact that that is what light armor doesn't have the most of. And then hardy elemental defender for a nice even defense against both of incoming physical and incoming magical damage. And that is the build, ladies and gentlemen. So again, guys, I want to apologize for the lack of PvP footage on this build. I didn't really have anyone to fight on the PTS. I mean, I ran around and I looked, and yeah, there's pretty much nobody on. But the Elsweyr patch is hitting the PC server this coming Monday, so I will be on the live patch playing this build very soon. I'm actually probably going to level up a Breton Templar before then, and then I'm going to have to power level the Necro, so yeah. Lots of leveling for me, but I think it'll be worth it because this is such a unique playstyle for the Magicka Templar. I mean, this is something that Magicka Templar really hasn't had the opportunity to do in the past, and now its Gap Closer is a very, very attractive skill, and you can see just how it brings this very cool build together. Tons of player-based AoE pressure, and yeah, the Gap Closer just allows you to deliver that really quickly to your opponent. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this build. I hope you guys are looking forward to trying it out as much as I am. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, like I said, hit the subscribe button. I create tons of ESO content, tons of builds. We've got community featured builds. We've got top 5s as well. So hit that subscribe button. You guys can keep up to date with all of that. And if you guys are interested in sending in your own clips for the community builds or for the top 5, you can send it in to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. We pick the top 5s live on Twitch together, so if you guys want to be part of that, check out my Twitch in the link in the description below as well. And then finally, if you guys want to support the stream, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to keep doing this. And last but not least, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They're free to try for the first 14 days via the link below. So if you guys want to give them a shot, go ahead and try. They give you better ping to your favorite games, and there's no credit card to sign up, so no harm, no foul if it doesn't help you out as much as you want. So thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for checking this build out, and I look forward to playing it. Look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have a great night, everyone.